The diplomatic vessel landed in what remained of Geneva. Jake Morrison stood with a small delegation of humans, including Amy Sullivan, Henry Blake, and representatives from various Earth governments. They watched as the Zinthara ambassador descended from the ship. Ambassador Kinshaw looked different from the soldiers humans had been fighting. Older, with lighter gray skin and patterns that seemed faded with age. The ambassador moved slowly without weapons, showing clear signs of exhaustion. "Captain Morrison?" Kinshaw spoke through a translator device, voice heavy with something that sounded like shame. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know my people do not deserve your mercy." Jake remained standing, his face neutral. "Talk. Explain why we shouldn't destroy every Zinthara ship in the sky and hunt down the rest of your forces." Kinshaw's head lowered. "Because we are already destroyed. The Zinthara Empire is gone. Our homeworld descends into civil war. Our colonies rebel. Species we oppressed for centuries now hunt my people across the galaxy. We are scattered, broken, and facing extinction." "You deserve extinction," Amy said coldly, "after what you did to Earth, after what you did to 17 other species." "You are correct," Kinshaw replied without arguing. "We deserve what is happening to us. But I come here not to beg for the guilty. I come to beg for the innocent. There are billions of Zinthara civilians who had no part in these wars, children who never held weapons, workers who never oppressed anyone. They are dying because of decisions made by commanders like Vexthor and councils that valued conquest over wisdom." Henry Blake stepped forward. "The virus we created crashed your quantum network. Your entire civilization depends on that technology. We didn't mean to cause such widespread damage. Intent matters less than consequence," Kinshaw said. "But I do not blame you. You fought to defend your home. What happened after was the result of our own flawed systems. We built an empire on a foundation that could not survive a single crack. When your virus struck, everything collapsed because we had made ourselves too dependent on technology we did not fully understand." Jake considered this. "What exactly are you asking from us?" "Several things. First, help us broker peace with the species we once enslaved. They will not listen to Zinthara voices, but they might listen to humans who defeated us. Second, provide humanitarian aid for Zinthara civilians caught in the chaos. Third, allow us to send technical experts to work with your scientists to repair some of the damage the virus caused. And finally, we ask that you accept Zinthara war criminals into your custody for trial, rather than execution." The room fell silent. Amy looked at Jake with disbelief. "They want us to save them. After everything." "Yes," Kinshaw said simply. "We have no pride left. We have no leverage. We come as beggars because that is what we have become." The negotiations lasted for 3 weeks. Representatives from Earth's various governments, military leaders, and civilian experts all debated what terms to offer the Zinthara. The discussions were heated. Some argued for harsh punishment. The Zinthara had invaded Earth with the intention of enslaving humanity. They deserved no mercy. Others pointed out that punishing civilian populations for military actions was wrong, regardless of species. Amy struggled with her own feelings. She had lost friends fighting the Zinthara. She had seen their cruelty firsthand. But she also remembered her training, the values she had sworn to uphold. Soldiers followed orders. Civilians were protected. Those were the rules that separated humans from monsters. "If we massacre Zinthara civilians, we become what they were," she said during one heated debate. "We prove that might makes right and that the strong can abuse the weak." "Is that what we want to teach the galaxy?" Danny Martinez brought a different perspective. "The Zinthara technology could advance human science by centuries. If we help them, they might share that knowledge willingly. If we destroy them, we lose that opportunity." Henry Blake was more philosophical. "The galaxy is watching how we handle this. We're the species that defeated the Zinthara Empire. How we act now will define how other species see us. Do we want to be seen as vengeful? Or do we want to be seen as just?" Jake Morrison listened to all arguments, then made his recommendation to Earth's leadership. "We offer peace, but with conditions. The Zinthara must completely disarm. They must face justice for war crimes. They must provide full technology transfers to Earth and other species they harmed. They must pay reparations. But we don't commit genocide. We're better than that." After much debate, Earth's leaders agreed. Terms were drafted. Kinshaw reviewed them with visible relief. "These terms are harsh but fair. We will accept them." The treaty was signed in the ruins of Geneva. The major points were clear. The Zinthara Empire would officially dissolve. All military forces would surrender to human custody. War criminals, including Commander Vexthor, would face trial. Zinthara technology would be shared freely with humans and other affected species. Reparations would be paid over time. In exchange, Earth would provide humanitarian aid to Zinthara civilians. Humans would help mediate with other species seeking revenge against the Zinthara. A new organization would be created called the Galactic Council of Free Worlds, with Earth as a founding member. But one problem remained. Commander Vexthor still refused to surrender. His stronghold in Australia had become a rallying point for Zinthara hardliners who rejected the treaty. Jake flew to Australia to personally address the situation. He stood outside the stronghold with a communication device broadcasting directly to Vexthor. "Commander, your empire is gone. Your High Council has surrendered. Your people need you to stop fighting so they can begin rebuilding. End this, face justice. Let your soldiers go home." Vexthor's response came after a long pause. "Justice? You mean execution. I will not die as a prisoner begging for mercy from inferiors." "We're not inferiors," Jake replied. "We proved that. You lost because you underestimated us. You thought technology made you superior, but you forgot that war is about more than weapons. It's about will. It's about adaptation. It's about refusing to quit even when everything seems hopeless. You want me to surrender to prove human superiority? No. I want you to surrender because your soldiers deserve to live. Because Zinthara civilians across the galaxy need their military to stop fighting, so peace can begin. You can't win, Vexthor. You can only choose how this ends. As a leader who sacrificed his pride for his people, or as a fanatic who threw away lives for nothing." Another long pause. Then Vexthor spoke again, his voice different. Tired. "If I surrender, you will not execute my soldiers? They'll face trial. Those guilty of war crimes will be punished. But soldiers who followed orders will be treated as prisoners of war and eventually released. You have my word." 3 days later, Vexthor emerged from the stronghold. He wore no armor, carried no weapons. Behind him came 200 Zinthara soldiers, also unarmed. They surrendered quietly without resistance. Vexthor looked at Jake with those black eyes that showed no emotion. "You fought well, human. Better than any species we ever faced. Perhaps that is why you can afford mercy. The strong can be generous. We're not being generous," Jake corrected. "We're being just. There's a difference." War crimes trials began 6 months later. They were held on Earth, broadcasted across the galaxy. Vexthor faced charges of invasion, enslavement, and crimes against humanity. His defense was simple. He had followed the orders of his government and acted according to Zinthara law and custom. The judges, a panel of humans, were unmoved. Following orders is not a defense when those orders are to commit atrocities. You had a choice. You could have refused. You are guilty. Vexthor was sentenced to life imprisonment. Other Zinthara commanders received similar sentences. Regular soldiers who had not committed specific atrocities were detained for a period and then released to return to their families. The trials were controversial. Some humans felt they were too lenient. Others felt they were too harsh. But they established an important precedent. The galaxy now had an example of how to handle war crimes and conquest, not through revenge, but through justice. Meanwhile, human scientists worked with Zinthara technical experts to repair the damage the virus had caused. It was slow work. The quantum network was incredibly complex, but gradually, essential systems were restored on Zinthara worlds, preventing mass starvation and infrastructure collapse. Danny Martinez led one of these technical teams. He worked alongside Zinthara engineers, learning from them while teaching them about human innovation. The cultural exchange was fascinating. The Zinthara were amazed by human creativity and adaptability. Humans were awed by Zinthara technical precision and deep understanding of quantum mechanics. "You know what's interesting?" Danny said to a Zinthara colleague named Teshavar. "Your people are brilliant at following complex technical procedures, but you're not good at improvising when things go wrong. Humans are the opposite. We're terrible at following instructions, but great at making things work with whatever we have." "Perhaps that is why you defeated us," Teshavar replied. "We relied on systems that worked perfectly until they didn't. You built systems that were imperfect but adaptable, Amy." Sullivan took on a new role as a liaison between human military forces and the Galactic Council. She traveled to other worlds. The breakthrough came on a cold morning in Colorado. Jake Morrison was reviewing intelligence reports when his communications officer rushed into the room, holding a decoded message they had intercepted from the Zinthera network. "Captain, you need to see this immediately." Jake read the message twice, his face growing pale. Commander Vexathor had requested reinforcements from the Zinthera High Council. The request had been denied. Instead, the High Council ordered Vexathor to end the resistance by making an example. He was to destroy a major human city completely, leaving nothing but dust and ash. The target was London. The strike would happen in 48 hours. "Get this information to every resistance cell on the planet," Jake ordered. "Priority 1. We need to move now." He immediately contacted Henry Blake in Boston. "Henry, we need that weapon you've been working on. Please tell me it's ready." Henry had been developing something based on his discoveries about the Zinthera communication network. A virus, but not a biological one. A digital weapon that could spread through the quantum entanglement system the aliens used. If it worked, it would disable their shields. "It's ready, but Jake, I haven't tested it fully. We only get one shot at this. If we upload it to their network and it fails, they'll patch the vulnerability. We don't have a choice. They're going to kill millions of people in London. If we don't act now, we might never get another chance." Henry closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "All right, but we need someone to upload it directly into one of their main command ships. It has to be done from inside their core systems." "I'll find someone," Jake promised. In New York, Amy Sullivan received the emergency broadcast. London was going to be destroyed. The Resistance had a weapon that might stop it. But someone needed to break into a Zinthera command ship and upload it directly. "I'll do it," she said immediately. Her team tried to argue, but Amy wouldn't hear it. "We knew this day would come. Someone has to go. It might as well be me." She assembled a strike team. 12 volunteers, all knowing it was likely a one-way mission. They had 45 hours to get inside the main Zinthera ship hovering over the Atlantic Ocean and upload Henry's virus. "How do we even get inside?" Chris Parker asked. "We steal one of their shuttles," Amy replied. "They move supplies from ground facilities to the ships constantly. We hijack one during a supply run." It was a desperate plan, but desperate was all they had left. The team moved into position near a Zinthera supply depot in New Jersey. They watched the loading procedures for hours, learning the patterns. At midnight, they struck. The attack was fast and brutal. Amy's team killed the Zinthera guards before they could sound an alarm. They loaded themselves into cargo containers along with Henry's virus device, which Danny Martinez had delivered personally. "I'm coming with you," Danny said. "You don't have to do this," Amy replied. "Yes, I do. I built the interface for the virus. If something goes wrong with the upload, you'll need me." 2 hours later, the shuttle launched with the stolen cargo. The human team huddled in the containers, barely breathing as they felt the craft lift off. They were actually flying into space toward the massive Zinthera command ship. The shuttle docked without incident. Zinthera workers began unloading cargo. When they opened the containers with humans inside, Amy's team exploded into action. Gunfire echoed through the ship's hangar bay. Zinthera soldiers rushed to respond. "Move, move, move," Amy shouted. Her team fought their way deeper into the ship. The Resistance had studied the layouts of Zinthera vessels based on intelligence gathered over months. They knew where they needed to go. The core systems were 10 levels up, heavily guarded. They lost 2 people in the first corridor. Energy blasts from Zinthera weapons cut through their bodies before they could take cover. Amy forced herself not to look back. She had to keep moving. The team split up to create diversions. Groups of 2 peeled off at each level, drawing enemy fire and buying time for Amy, Danny, and 3 others to reach the core. "Seal that door," Amy ordered as they entered a maintenance corridor. Chris Parker stayed behind to hold the position. He welded the door shut while Zinthera soldiers pounded on the other side. "Go, I'll buy you as much time as I can." Amy wanted to argue, but there was no time. She grabbed Danny and the remaining 2 team members and ran toward the core systems room. They found it behind massive sealed doors. The lock required a Zinthera authorization code. Danny pulled out a device he had built from stolen parts. "Give me 30 seconds. The seconds felt like hours. Behind them, they could hear explosions and gunfire. Their team was dying to buy them this time. Danny's hands shook as he worked. "Got it." The doors opened. They rushed inside. The core system room was huge, filled with alien technology that pulsed with blue light. In the center was the main quantum processor, the heart of the ship's communication and shield systems. There, Danny pointed. That's where we upload the virus. He ran to the console and began connecting his device. Zinthara symbols flashed across screens. He had studied their language for months, teaching himself to read it. His fingers flew across the alien controls. Alarms began blaring. The Zinthara knew they were in the core. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors outside. How long? Amy demanded, positioning herself at the door with her remaining team members. 2 minutes, maybe 3. The Zinthara breached the outer corridor. Energy blasts flew through the doorway. One of Amy's team members went down, then another. Now it was just her and Danny. Faster, she screamed, returning fire. I'm going as fast as I can. A Zinthara soldier rushed through the door. Amy shot it 3 times before it fell. 2 more appeared behind it. She killed one but took a hit to her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. Done, Danny shouted. The virus is uploading. How long until it spreads? Should be instant. It uses their own quantum network against them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every light in the room flickered. The blue glow of the alien technology turned red. Alarms changed pitch, becoming more urgent. Above Earth, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Every Zinthara ship in orbit suddenly lost its shields. The energy barriers that had made them invincible simply vanished. Their systems crashed one after another as the virus spread through their quantum network. Jake Morrison watched from his command center in Colorado as satellites showed the alien ships going dark. It worked. Henry's virus worked. He immediately broadcast orders to every military unit on the planet. All forces, engage now. The shields are down! Hit them with everything we have. Around the world, resistance cells and hidden military units opened fire on Zinthara positions. Missiles that had been useless for months suddenly found their targets. Fighter jets that couldn't touch the alien ships now tore them apart. The Zinthara forces went from invincible to vulnerable in seconds. Their soldiers, suddenly exposed, scrambled to retreat. Their ships, unable to defend themselves, began falling from the sky. On the command ship, Amy dragged herself to her feet. Her shoulder burned with pain, but she was alive. Danny worked frantically at the console, watching the virus spread. It's reaching their other systems, he said in amazement. Not just Earth, it's spreading to Zinthara forces in 3 other star systems. The quantum network connects everything. But their celebration was short-lived. More Zinthara soldiers poured into the core room. Amy raised her weapon, but she was out of ammunition. Danny stood in front of her, trying to shield her with his own body. Then something unexpected happened. The Zinthara ship shuddered. Multiple explosions rocked the vessel. Human missiles were hitting it now that the shields were gone. The aliens in the core room stumbled, losing their balance. The ship is going down, Danny shouted. Emergency systems activated. The Zinthara soldiers fled, more concerned with survival than capturing the humans. Amy and Danny ran for the hangar bay. They could feel the ship losing altitude, beginning to fall toward the ocean below. They found an escape pod and climbed inside. Danny, who had studied Zinthara systems, managed to launch it. The pod shot away from the dying command ship just as it broke apart, pieces of it crashing into the Atlantic. The pod hit the water hard. Amy and Danny floated there, watching debris fall around them. Within an hour, a human rescue helicopter found them. Jake Morrison coordinated the global counterattack from Colorado. The Zinthara forces were in complete disarray. Without their shields and with their communication network compromised, they couldn't coordinate their defense. Human forces pushed them back everywhere. Commander Vexthor watched his fleet fall apart. In 6 hours, he lost 30% of his Earth forces. Ships crashed. Soldiers died. His perfect invasion had become a disaster. Worse, he was receiving reports from other Zinthara territories. The virus had spread throughout their network. Forces in other star systems were also losing their shields, and something else was happening. The other species that the Zinthara had conquered were watching Earth's broadcasts. They saw humans fighting back successfully. Rebellions began breaking out across the Zinthara Empire. Species that had been enslaved for decades suddenly found hope. If primitive humans could defeat the Zinthara, maybe they could too. The High Council contacted Vexthor in a panic. "What have you done?" "The Empire is collapsing." "I did what you ordered," Vexthor replied coldly. "I tried to break the humans. Instead, they broke us." The sky turned dark at exactly 3 in the afternoon. Jake Morrison stood on the roof of his command center in Colorado, watching massive shadows spread across the land below. The ships were bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Hundreds of them filled the sky, blocking out the sun like metal clouds. His radio crackled to life. Voices shouted from every military base across the country. The same thing was happening everywhere. New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, London, Moscow. Every major city on Earth now lived in the shadow of alien vessels. Captain Morrison, they're broadcasting something, his communications officer said through the radio. Every screen, every phone, every device on the planet is showing the same message. Jake ran back inside to the control room. The main screen showed a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It stood on two legs like a human, but its skin was gray and covered in strange patterns that seemed to move. Its eyes were completely black, and when it spoke, its voice came through in perfect English. People of Earth, I am Commander Vexthor of the Zinthara Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender all weapons immediately. You will report to processing centers in your cities. Resistance will be met with elimination. You have 24 hours to comply. The message ended. The screens went dark. Then they flickered back to life, showing images of Zinthara soldiers marching through the streets of major cities. They moved with perfect coordination, their weapons held ready. Every few minutes, the message from Vexthor repeated. Jake grabbed his phone and called the Pentagon. The line was busy. He tried again. Still busy. Everyone was trying to reach everyone else, and the communication systems couldn't handle it. Amy Sullivan sat in her apartment in New York City, staring at her television. She was a lieutenant in the Army National Guard, currently on leave. Now she watched alien soldiers walking past her building. They were real. This was actually happening. She grabbed her uniform and started getting dressed. Her training kicked in automatically. Whatever was coming, she needed to be ready. Her phone rang. It was her commanding officer. Sullivan, report to base immediately. We're mobilizing everyone. Yes, sir. On my way. She looked out her window one more time. A Zinthara soldier stood on the corner below, its weapon scanning the buildings. Amy felt her hand shake for just a moment. Then she took a deep breath and headed for the door. At MIT in Massachusetts, Henry Blake was in his laboratory when the ships arrived. He was a physicist, one of the best in the world. His specialty was quantum mechanics and advanced computing systems. Right now he was watching the news with his research team. This is impossible, one of his students said. How did they get here without us detecting them earlier? Henry leaned closer to the screen. The broadcast was showing footage of Zinthara technology. Their ships moved without visible engines. Their weapons fired some kind of energy that melted through concrete and steel like butter. They're using technology we don't understand, Henry said quietly. Look at that. No exhaust, no heat signature that our sensors could detect. They must be manipulating space itself. Can we fight them? Another student asked. Henry didn't answer. He was already thinking, his mind racing through possibilities. Every technology had weaknesses. Every system had flaws. They just needed to find them. The first military engagement happened 3 hours after the initial broadcast. An Air Force squadron tried to intercept one of the smaller Zinthara ships over Nevada. Jake Morrison watched the footage from his command center, hoping to see something useful. The human fighters fired missiles. The projectiles hit some kind of invisible barrier around the alien ship and exploded harmlessly. The Zinthara vessel didn't even slow down. It fired back once. A beam of purple energy lanced out and touched one of the fighters. The plane simply disappeared, vaporized in an instant. The other pilots scattered, but the alien ship moved impossibly fast. It caught 2 more fighters before the rest could escape. The battle lasted less than 30 seconds. 3 jets destroyed, 0 damage to the enemy. God help us, someone whispered in the control room. Jake's jaw tightened. Get me every piece of data from that engagement. I want to know everything about those shields and that weapon. If they can kill us, we can kill them. We just need to figure out how. By the end of the first day, the situation was clear. Humanity's military was outmatched. The Zinthara had destroyed major military installations in every country. Their shields stopped everything humans threw at them. Missiles, bullets, even nuclear weapons couldn't penetrate their defenses. The aliens began constructing large buildings in the centers of major cities. They used machines that assembled structures in hours, not months. Amy watched from a hidden position as one of these buildings rose in Central Park. It was massive, made of the same gray material as their ships. Zinthara soldiers forced civilians toward these buildings. Anyone who resisted was shot immediately. Amy counted at least 20 people killed in front of her eyes. Her hand gripped her rifle, but she couldn't do anything. Not yet. She was one soldier against an army. Inside the buildings, people were sorted into groups. The Zinthara scanned each human with handheld devices, speaking to each other in clicking, whistling sounds. Then they assigned numbers to people and directed them to different areas. One woman tried to run. A Zinthara soldier grabbed her without effort and threw her back into line. The alien's strength was incredible. It handled the grown woman like she weighed nothing. "This is processing," a Zinthara announced through a translator device. "You are now property of the Empire. You will work. You will obey. You will serve." Henry Blake managed to avoid capture for the first 2 days. He hid in the basement of his laboratory, watching and learning. He had grabbed several pieces of equipment before going into hiding. Now he was scanning the Zinthara broadcasts, trying to understand their technology. On the 3rd day, he saw something interesting. The alien communications had a pattern. They were using some kind of quantum entanglement network. The signals were nearly instant, traveling faster than light. But Henry noticed small fluctuations in the frequencies. "They're not perfect," he whispered to himself. "There are gaps in their system." He started taking notes, filling page after page with calculations. If he could understand how their network worked, maybe he could find a way to disrupt it. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jake Morrison refused to surrender. His command center went dark to avoid detection. He established contact with other military units that had gone underground. Around the world, soldiers and civilians were disappearing into mountains, forests, and hidden bunkers. The Zinthara controlled the cities, but they couldn't be everywhere. Earth was a big planet with millions of places to hide. Jake knew this was just the beginning. The invasion had succeeded, but the war wasn't over. On his radio, coded messages came in from resistance groups forming across the globe. People who wouldn't give up. People who would fight even when fighting seemed impossible. "This is Morrison to all units," he broadcast on the encrypted channel. "Stay hidden. Stay alive. Learn everything you can about the enemy. We lost the first battle, but humanity doesn't quit. We're going to find their weaknesses, and then we're going to make them regret coming to our planet." Across the world, thousands of people heard his message. In New York, Amy Sullivan smiled grimly. In Boston, Henry Blake looked up from his calculations. In cities and towns everywhere, humans began to plan. The Zinthara thought the war was over. They thought humans would break like every other species they had conquered. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 months had passed since the invasion. The world looked different now. Zinthara buildings stood in every major city, tall and cold against the sky. Their soldiers patrolled the streets in groups of 3, always watching, always ready. But in the mountains of Colorado, Jake Morrison had built something the aliens didn't expect. A network. Hidden bases connected by runners who moved at night, carrying messages between resistance cells. Radio was too dangerous. The Zinthara could track signals. So humans went back to the old ways, using people and paper. Jake stood in a cave that had been converted into a command center. Maps covered the walls, marked with enemy positions and supply routes. Every day brought new information from scouts and spies still living in the occupied cities. "Captain, we have a runner from New York," one of his officers said. A young man entered, exhausted from days of travel. He carried a sealed envelope. Inside was a report from Amy Sullivan. Jake read it carefully, his expression growing darker with each line. Amy had been leading raids against Zinthara supply convoys. Small attacks, hit-and-run operations. Nothing big enough to draw major attention, but enough to hurt them. Her report detailed their latest success. They had ambushed a convoy carrying food supplies for the alien soldiers. The entire shipment was destroyed, but the report also contained new intelligence. Amy had noticed something important. The Zinthara soldiers never ate Earth food. They never drank Earth water. Everything they consumed came from their ships. They lived in sealed environments and wore breathing filters when they went outside for too long. "They can't live here naturally," Jake said aloud. "They need their own supplies for everything." This was useful information. If the Zinthara couldn't use Earth's resources, then every bullet, every meal, every piece of equipment had to come from somewhere else. That meant supply lines. That meant vulnerabilities. In New York, Amy crouched on a rooftop watching a Zinthara patrol pass below. She had 8 people with her, all former military or police. They had been living in the abandoned subway tunnels for months, coming out only to strike at the enemy. The convoy comes through at midnight. She whispered to her team. Same route as always. They're predictable. One of her team members, a former Marine named Chris Parker, checked his weapon. We only have enough ammunition for one more raid after this. Then we better make it count, Amy replied. She had changed in these 6 months. They all had. The woman who once followed orders without question now made life and death decisions every day. She had learned to move silently, to kill quickly, and to live with the weight of command. At midnight, the convoy appeared, 3 Zinthara transport vehicles, moving slowly through the empty streets. Amy's team had planted explosives along the route. Simple devices made from materials scavenged from construction sites. Nothing fancy but effective. The lead vehicle passed the first marker. Amy pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the front of the convoy, flipping the vehicle onto its side. The other 2 stopped immediately, and Zinthara soldiers poured out, searching for attackers. Now, Amy whispered. Her team opened fire from 3 different rooftops. The Zinthara shields protected them from direct hits, but the resistance fighters had learned to aim for the ground near the aliens' feet. Ricochets and debris found gaps in the energy barriers. 3 Zinthara went down before they could locate the attackers. The rest returned fire, their plasma weapons burning holes in the buildings. Amy's team scattered, moving through pre-planned escape routes. They were gone before reinforcements arrived. In the tunnels an hour later, Amy's team counted their success. They had destroyed another convoy and killed 3 enemies. Small victories, but they added up. More importantly, they had captured a Zinthara communication device. Get this to the science team, Amy told Chris. Maybe they can learn something from it. That device eventually made its way to Henry Blake. He was still in Boston, now working with a group of scientists and engineers who had avoided capture. They operated from a hidden laboratory in the basement of an abandoned hospital. Henry held the Zinthara communicator carefully. It was small, about the size of a phone, but the technology inside was incredible. He connected it to his makeshift analysis equipment and began scanning its systems. This is remarkable, he said to his team. Look at this quantum processing. It's using entangled particles to communicate faster than light. Can we use it? Asked Linda Hayes, a computer scientist who worked with Henry. Maybe. But more importantly, I think I found something. Henry pointed to his screen. See these frequency patterns? The Zinthara communication network operates on specific quantum frequencies, but there are ranges they don't use, gaps in their perception. Why would they leave gaps? Linda asked. Because they can't perceive those frequencies. Their biology is different from ours. These gaps are invisible to them, but we can detect them with the right equipment. Henry worked for 3 days straight, barely sleeping. He modified human radio equipment to pick up these hidden frequencies. When he finally succeeded, he heard something amazing. Zinthara communications completely unencrypted because they thought no one could detect them. We can hear everything they're saying, Henry whispered. Every order, every plan, every movement. They think these frequencies are secure. He immediately sent word to Jake Morrison. This was the breakthrough they needed. The resistance could now predict enemy movements and avoid their patrols. Better yet, they could set traps. But Henry's discoveries didn't stop there. While studying the Zinthara equipment, he noticed something else. The aliens used air filtration systems constantly. Their soldiers wore breathing masks during extended outdoor operations. He began to wonder why. He collected samples of air from areas where Zinthara had been present. Then he compared them to normal Earth air. The difference was subtle but important. The aliens were filtering out something. But what? Henry thought about it for days. Then he remembered his biology classes from college. Earth's atmosphere wasn't just oxygen and nitrogen. It contained countless microorganisms, pollen, spores, and bacteria, things so common that humans never noticed them. He began testing. He exposed Zinthara equipment to common Earth bacteria. The results shocked him. The bacterial colonies grew unusually fast on the alien materials. More than that, they seemed to break down the strange metals the Zinthara used. They're vulnerable to our microorganisms, Henry said to his team. That's why they filter everything. That's why they live in sealed environments. Earth's natural biology is toxic to them. Meanwhile, in one of the Zinthara processing centers, a human worker named Danny Martinez was making his own discoveries. Danny had been a mechanical engineer before the invasion. Now he worked in an alien factory, assembling components for Zinthara equipment. The aliens watched their human workers constantly, but they didn't understand human ingenuity. Danny worked slowly on purpose, studying everything he built. He memorized the designs and smuggled small tools back to the work camp at night. "They think we're stupid," Danny told the other workers in quiet whispers. "They don't realize we're learning from them." He noticed that Xinthera technology, while advanced, had patterns. The same basic components appeared in different devices. Once you understood the fundamentals, you could figure out how everything worked. Danny also noticed the medical station in the factory. Several Xinthera workers had gotten sick recently. They isolated themselves immediately and took strong medications. One of them died despite treatment. The body was removed quickly, but Danny saw it happen. He started paying attention to when the aliens got sick. It always happened after they spent time in areas where humans worked, areas that weren't perfectly sterile. Danny began to understand what Henry Blake had discovered independently. The Xinthara couldn't handle Earth's natural environment. He started sabotaging the cleaning systems in the factory, making them less effective. Nothing obvious, just small adjustments that let more Earth air and dust into the facility. Within weeks, more Xinthera workers fell ill. Production slowed. "Keep doing it," another human worker whispered. "Make them weak." Across the planet, humans were learning and adapting. Every day brought new intelligence about the enemy. The Xinthara had superior technology, but they didn't understand humans. They didn't realize that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't guns or missiles. It was the refusal to give up. Jake Morrison compiled reports from around the world. Resistance cells in every country were having success with small raids. The Xinthera were powerful, but they were spread thin, trying to control an entire planet. And now, thanks to Henry's discovery, the Resistance could intercept their communications. "We're not winning yet," Jake told his officers, "but we're not losing any more either. The Xinthara expected us to break. Instead, we're learning to fight back. Keep the pressure on. Make them work for every inch of ground. Bleed their supplies. Make them sick. Make them scared." Amy Sullivan received new orders through the underground network. Her cell was to begin biological warfare. They were to spread Earth bacteria in Xinthera facilities. Nothing complicated. Just stop cleaning. Let nature do the work. It seemed too simple to be effective, but Amy trusted the scientists. She passed the word to her team. Instead of trying to kill Xinthera soldiers directly, they would poison their environment. Commander Vexthor stared at the reports coming from every corner of the Xinthera Empire. The numbers were devastating. In just 3 days since the humans had uploaded their virus, 37 colony worlds had declared independence. 4 entire fleets had been destroyed by rebellions. The quantum communication network, the backbone of their empire, remained compromised. He sat in his command chamber on Earth, surrounded by advisors who looked terrified. For the first time in Xinthera history, they were losing, not just on one world, but everywhere at once. "The High Council demands your immediate return to the homeworld," one advisor said quietly. "To face execution for my failures," Vexthor replied without emotion. "No, I will remain here and try to salvage what I can." But there was little to salvage. On Earth, human forces pressed their advantage relentlessly. Jake Morrison coordinated attacks across the planet, targeting Xinthera strongholds while they were still reeling from the loss of their shields. "Focus on their supply depots," Jake ordered his commanders. "Without supplies from orbit, their ground forces can't sustain themselves. Cut them off and they'll starve." The strategy worked. Xinthera soldiers began running out of food, medicine, and ammunition. They had never planned for a long ground war. Their entire military doctrine assumed quick victories through overwhelming technological superiority. Amy Sullivan led her team in the retaking of New York City. The Xinthera had retreated to fortified positions around their processing centers, but without air support and with their shields gone, these positions were vulnerable. "They're trapped," Chris Parker observed. He had survived the mission to the command ship with serious injuries, but he refused to stay in the medical bay. "They can't hold these positions forever." "Then let's make sure they don't have to," Amy said. Her forces surrounded the main Xinthera stronghold in Manhattan. Instead of attacking directly, they cut off all access routes. No supplies in, no reinforcements. The aliens inside would have to surrender or slowly die. Inside the stronghold, Xinthera soldiers faced a situation they had never experienced before. Fear. For the first time, they were the ones trapped and outnumbered. The humans outside weren't going away. They were patient, methodical, and growing stronger every day. The Zinthera tried to ration their supplies, but it wasn't enough. Within 2 weeks, soldiers began showing signs of malnutrition. Their sealed environment protected them from Earth's bacteria, but it also meant they couldn't forage for food. They were completely dependent on supplies that were no longer coming. Worse, fights began breaking out among the Zinthara themselves. A faction of younger soldiers believed Commander Vexthor had led them into a disaster. They wanted to surrender. The older, more traditional soldiers refused to consider such dishonor. The internal conflict came to a head one night when junior officers attempted to overthrow their commanders. Gunfire echoed through the Zinthara stronghold as they fought each other. Amy's scouts reported the chaos to her. "They're killing each other," she said in disbelief. "The stress is breaking them." It was a pattern repeating across the planet. Zinthara forces, cut off from command and facing impossible situations, were fracturing. Some tried to fight their way to evacuation points. Others fortified their positions and prepared for last stands. A few even attempted to negotiate with local human forces. Henry Blake continued his work in Boston, but now with a new focus. The virus had done its job too well. It had spread through the entire Zinthera quantum network, affecting systems light years away. He was receiving reports of Zinthera technology failing in star systems humans had never even visited. "We may have destroyed more than their military," Linda Hayes said, looking at the data. "Their whole civilization depends on this network. Banking, power grids, transportation, everything runs through quantum entanglement systems." Henry felt a cold weight in his stomach. "We didn't just win a war. We crashed their entire society." The implications were staggering. The Zinthara Empire wasn't just losing militarily. It was collapsing economically and technologically. Millions of Zinthara civilians across the galaxy were suffering as their infrastructure failed. "Should we try to fix it?" Linda asked. "I don't know if we can," Henry admitted. "The virus rewrote fundamental protocols. Reversing it might be impossible." Jake Morrison received intelligence that changed everything. A faction of the Zinthara High Council had staged a coup. They had arrested the Warhawks who ordered the Earth invasion, and were now desperately trying to stop the Empire's collapse. But it was too late. The damage was done. Reports came in from across the galaxy. Species that the Zinthara had oppressed for centuries were rising up. The Krill, a race enslaved for 300 years, had seized control of 7 major Zinthara shipyards. The Ventari, a peaceful species forced into mining operations, had captured their overseers and were now hunting Zinthara soldiers. "This is bigger than Earth," Jake said to his staff. "We didn't just free ourselves. We sparked a galactic revolution. But with revolution came chaos. The Zinthara Empire had maintained order across dozens of star systems. With that order collapsing, violence was spreading. Former slave species were taking revenge. Some were executing Zinthara civilians, others were fighting each other over newly freed territories. On Earth, Danny Martinez worked with other engineers to study captured Zinthara technology. Now that they had access to intact systems, they could learn how everything worked. The discoveries were incredible. Their ships use zero-point energy, Danny explained to a group of scientists. They tap into quantum vacuum fluctuations. "It's free, limitless power. Can we replicate it?" Someone asked. "Maybe, given time. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. But now that we can study it, we can learn." This became the new priority for human scientists. Learn from the Zinthara. Take their technology and adapt it. Use their own weapons against them, and build a defense that would prevent any future invasions. Amy stood on the roof of a building in New York, watching the Zinthara stronghold in the distance. It had been quiet for 2 days. No movement, no communications. Either they were all dead or they were waiting for something. Her radio crackled. "Sullivan, we're receiving a transmission from inside the stronghold. They want to talk." Amy couldn't believe it. They want to negotiate? They want to surrender. She arranged a meeting at a neutral location. When the Zinthara delegation arrived, she barely recognized them. The proud, arrogant aliens who had invaded Earth 9 months ago now looked defeated and desperate. Their equipment was damaged. They moved slowly, clearly weakened by hunger and stress. The lead Zinthara officer spoke through a translator. "We wish to surrender to human authority. We request medical aid and safe passage to a neutral location." "You invaded our planet," Amy said coldly. "You enslaved our people. You killed millions. And now you want mercy? Yes, the officer said simply. We have no other option. Our empire is gone. Our homeworld is in chaos. We are soldiers abandoned by our government. We only want to survive. Amy wanted to refuse. Part of her wanted revenge for everything the Zinthera had done. But she thought about what her mission truly was. She was fighting to protect humanity, not to become a monster. I'll relay your request to my superiors, she said finally. No promises. Similar scenes played out across Earth. Zinthera units, isolated and desperate, began surrendering to human forces. Some humans wanted to execute the aliens immediately. Others saw an opportunity for intelligence gathering and war crimes trials. Jake Morrison made the difficult decision to accept surrenders and treat prisoners according to human laws. We're better than them, he told his commanders. We prove that by how we act now that we're winning. But not everyone agreed. In some areas, human forces executed Zinthera prisoners rather than taking them captive. The lines between justice and revenge blurred as people who had suffered under occupation took their anger out on former oppressors. Commander Vexthor, watching his forces crumble, made his own decision. He would not surrender. He gathered his most loyal soldiers and prepared for a final stand. If the Zinthara Empire was truly dead, he would die with it. His last stronghold was in Australia, far from major population centers. Jake Morrison received intelligence about Vexthor's position and his intention to fight to the death. We can't just let him fortify that position, one of Jake's advisors said. He could hold out for months. Or we could offer him terms, Jake suggested. He's a war criminal, but he's also a symbol. If we can get him to surrender publicly, it might convince other Zinthera holdouts to give up. They sent a message to Vexthor. Surrender, face trial, and your remaining soldiers would be treated fairly. Refuse, and human forces would destroy his position completely. Vexthor's response was defiant. The Zinthera do not surrender to inferior species. Come and face us if you dare. Jake prepared for an assault, but before it could begin, something unexpected happened. A Zinthera ship appeared in Earth's orbit. But it wasn't a warship. It was a diplomatic vessel, broadcasting on all frequencies. People of Earth, this is Ambassador Kinshaw of the reformed Zinthara Council. We come in peace. We wish to negotiate an end to hostilities. The message shocked everyone. The Zinthara were actually suing for peace. Their empire had collapsed so completely that they were now begging their former victims for help.